Okay, welcome everybody and to those that are watching this recording after the event. This is the third in the series of 4 webinars where we're showcasing projects funded through the Integrated Sustainable Travel in Community Rail Fund. The format of the meeting today is going to be that we'll hear from each of the 3 speakers in turn. That'll be around 10 to 15 minutes each. Then we'll take questions all together at the end. If you're in attendance today, you're welcome to ask questions. You can either raise your hand at the end of the meeting, or if you want to do them as you go, feel free to put them in the chat bar. By way of a quick introduction to those not familiar with the Integrated Sustainable Travel in Community Rail Fund, or Transport in Community Rail Fund as also known. The fund has been in existence from about 2020. We've given away about £136,000 in grants, and within 23-24 we've funded 11 projects. Maximum grant allowable has been 8,000, with some match funding required as well for the larger amounts. The fund is going to be finishing as of this year, and we're hoping that anybody interested in promoting a similar project in the future will be able to apply to the Community Rail Development Fund, CRDF, which there'll be an announcement about very shortly. If you want to catch up on the other webinars in this series, the previous 2 are already available online. If you haven't seen those already, you'll find those in the Member Services tab, and this webinar and future webinars will also be added there as well. There's another set of these webinars happening next week, 27th of June, same time between noon and 1 p.m, where we're going to have Kent CRP, Mid Cheshire CRP and South East Community Rail Partnership presenting on their ISTF funded projects. And some future dates for your diary: Thursday the 11th of July we have our Integrated Sustainable Transport discussion group, and we have some guest speakers arranged to join us from Sustrans on that day. And on a much advanced notice, Thursday the 26th September between 11 and 12 we have some guest speakers again from Sustrans and also Active Travel England, specifically going to be talking about local cycling and walking infrastructure plans, which should be a really interesting webinar to attend if you can make it. So for today, we have joining us South East Lancashire CRP, Dr. Steph Dermott is going to be talking first about the Rivington bus project, and then Hannah McDonnell from Gloucestershire CRP about the study to explore opportunities to access nature, and then finishing with Derek Bodey from Friends of Buxton Station to talk about the feasibility study. All interesting speakers. Thank you for joining us today and thank you for your time. I'll start by handing over to Steph.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'll just attempt to share my screen. Hopefully that's working. So my name's Steph. I am the Community Rail Development Officer from South East Lancashire Community Rail Partnership. Apologies if you can hear my dog in the background in advance. So we've had funding from the Integrated Sustainable Transport Fund for our Rivington bus project, which I'll give you a little bit of background on first, and talk to you about the project that's running this year. So a little bit of background. Our Rivington bus project originally started in 2021, so we're now in year 4 of the service. The project was initially to provide a public transport link to the area known as Rivington Country Park, which is really, really popular with a range of different people. So there's a lot of people that go up there to hike up Rivington Pike. A lot of cyclists use the area, a lot of families visit, especially on weekends during the school holidays. But as a result of this, the traffic flow and the parking is a particular issue in that area, which obviously also presents other issues in terms of environmental considerations, including pollution. So we wanted to provide a viable public transport alternative, not just to provide an alternative for car users, but also to facilitate people that may not afford to run a car, people that rely on public transport that may not be able to access the area otherwise. So we also wanted to do this and increase connectivity, so integrated links between the rail stations nearby, and also increase the local economy and the tourist economy by allowing people to access via train links from outside of the area, for example, coming from Greater Manchester. So for the duration of the service so far, we've been running it on a Sunday and on bank holidays, mainly due to the cost of the service. But as I'll talk about later, there are hopes to expand that. So majority of the services have been May to October. As you'll see, this year we're running slightly different timetable. So the history of the service from 2021, The original bus link that we ran was from Bolton Interchange, so Bolton Rail Station, which was an extension of an existing service run by Diamond North West. And that, again, extended the service and linked to include Rivington Country Park. Second year of service in 2022, we amended slightly, and the route then ran a bus from Horwich Parkway Station, which is slightly closer to Rivington, again operated by Diamond North West. Last year's service, we had a slight change. So again, we ran from Horwich Parkway, but when we were discussing the continuation of the service with Diamond, it was during the franchising process in Greater Manchester, so the B network, and they had a little bit of uncertainty and a bit of hesitation to run the service again due to the issues with driver and vehicle availability. But thankfully, after conversations with a few different operators, we had Stagecoach who agreed to run the service and have been doing so last year and again this year. So this year is our 4th year of service. The funding that we got from CRN this year was to facilitate, in particular, an expansion of the service. So with the help of Lancashire County Council, who have funded the extension, we're now happy that the bus also links not just Horwich Parkway, but also goes all the way up to Chorley and Chorley Interchange. So that provides access now through Horwich Parkway and Chorley Railway Station, train links from Preston, Bolton and Manchester, which just improves the whole connectivity of the service. The service again is running hourly. It's on Sunday and Bank Holiday Mondays, all the way from the 26th of May to the 3rd of November. So we're really hoping to see, as it's the 4th year of service as well, we're hoping to see passenger numbers increase as people get used to that being a reliable service every Sunday. And it's also a hail and ride. So anywhere where it's safe along the route, people can hail the bus to stop. The standard fare applies of £1 per person and all concessions valid. And all the revenue that's collected from the service will contribute to the cost of running the bus going forwards, either for this year or for next year, depending on the funding status. So as you can see, the service has been funded by the Community Rail Network Integrated Transport Fund, but also match funded by Cross Country, Transport for Greater Manchester and Lancashire County Council funding the extension part of the service. But over the years, since 2021, we have used a variety of different funders, including Northern, and also Harwich Town Council have put funding in themselves because they're very supportive of the project. So it's been good to work with the local town council as well as with county councils and with Greater Manchester as well. A couple of challenges that I just wanted to mention as part of the project. So in terms of running the route and getting the operator to agree to a specific route, we have had issues in the past. For example, the first year of service, we had quite significant problems with unexpected roadworks that were announced partway through, well, very shortly into the service, which did cause some delays and some cancellations to service, which was really disappointing for us, but unfortunately unavoidable for us and for the operator. We also have issues with traffic in the area. As I've mentioned, there's a lot of parked cars. There's a lot of traffic, heavy traffic at the weekends specifically, and then during the school holidays. So these are considerations on the frequency of the service, as if the bus gets stuck in traffic, they may not be able to complete the route in time. And that also presents limitations to the size and specification of the bus. So, for example, there's issues with having certain double-decker bus or single-decker bus, depending on the route that they'll take. There's overhanging trees because it's a country area, and also the turning circle of the bus. So there was potential and there was concerns from the operator that it might get stuck. So for this purpose, part of the route is a one-way system. Funding delays and time constraints. We did have issues in terms of confirming funding from different funders and from agreeing ourselves as a CRP to match fund at points of the project. And this did lead to time constraints in terms of agreeing the service with the operators, getting the timetable through and then registering the service. And again, as I've said, the change of operator was also something unavoidable for us and presented a challenge, but obviously was achievable with the help of another operator, which thankfully has worked out all right in the end. Publicity and promotion does have a result on passenger numbers. And again, with it being the 4th year of service, we were really conscious that it would take a lot of time to get this service embedded in the local public as understanding that it is a regular and reliable service and it is a viable alternative to them using the car at the weekend. So we are starting to find now, with the recent passenger numbers we've been given from this year's service that started obviously just a few weeks ago, but passenger numbers this year already are starting to look like a good increase on the previous year. And obviously with the help of Lancashire County Council extending the route to Chorley, it's presenting another kind of positive to be able to push the service to more local areas as well. So for the future, we would like ideally for it to be a daily service. I know it seems like a big step up from it being a weekend service, but this is kind of ideally what we would like. So it really becomes a viable alternative for public transport to really kind of reduce the cars and the traffic flow in that area, particularly the parking that's a problem. We have experienced difficulties in funding, so we were really thankful for CRN to fund this year's service and contribute to that as a result of the match funding that was given from Lancashire County Council. So it was a good opportunity to be able to expand on the service in a new way and to get funding for what is, in theory, the continuation of an existing project, which is always difficult to find funding for in community rail. But there was the opportunity to do that expansion piece and to explore different areas with the service. So we're really grateful for that. Ideally, we would like to hand over the service to the B network and prove its viability as a route to be delivered by TFGM. So moving forwards, we will be going into discussions with them and with the local representatives on the B network committee. So fingers crossed, that's what we would like to do for the future, as it's uncertain as to whether we'll get 5 years worth of funding for it. But we are hopeful that we will prove this year the viability of the service and the importance of providing those integrated transport links and public transport alternatives. And that's about it. Apologies if I've rushed through it.
Oh, thank you, Steph. That was great. Really good introduction to the service. And like you say, it's very challenging sometimes to get continuity for funding when it's not a new project. So we were really happy to support, because we know you've got, for want of a better word, a good exit plan for handing the service over once you prove viability. Yeah. So fantastic. And we look forward to getting some numbers about passenger use over the summer as well. So make sure you keep those aside for us. We love to have those. Thanks, Steph. I'll hand straight over to Hannah McDonnell from Gloucestershire CRP, if I could.
Sure, of course. Hi there. Thanks, Steph. Just want to say that was really interesting and really impressive. I was really impressed with what you've achieved. I mean, it's really great to see that sort of progression over 4 or 5 years, and I really have my fingers crossed that it continues, because it's really amazing. We're certainly at very early stages in comparison to what you've been doing in East Lanc. So yeah. My name's Hannah McDonnell. I'm going to share the screen. If I can manage that. I have got a stiff neck, so if I'm looking a bit stiff, that's because I'm moving. So I'm going to be moving in a very strange way. So I'm going to move towards my screen, which is to my right, but I'm not going to twist my neck. Can you see that all right?
Yeah, that's all good, Hannah.
That's fabulous. Thank you. Okay, so that's just an introductory slide. This piece of work that we did was around connecting rail and rural destinations, and we commissioned a feasibility study that was focusing on accessing natural spaces across Gloucestershire, and I'll dig into the detail of that. Okay, so I just wanted to get into sort of some of the background as to where we're coming from as a community rail partnership. We focus quite heavily on access to nature and leisure in several of our programmes, and we very much focused on sort of the process and how we build and identify where we need to put our attention. So the feasibility that was commissioned thanks to this funding was actually stimulated by other programmes of work that we've been doing with local communities, and that sort of goes through a whole process of listening to local people, understanding what their needs are, designing programmes that fit those needs, and then obviously to do that we need to work in partnership. and then build those access to leisure programs. And some of those products might be sort of access maps, trail maps, leisure maps, and also obviously in this case an encouragement to get a more kind of strategic approach to integrating transport from rail stations connecting to countryside spaces. So just wanted to kind of give a bit of a picture of where we're coming from as an organisation. And we have been running for 3 years an Access to Nature programme for young people that identified specific places that those young people really wanted to go to but couldn't get to due to the nature of the county we're in, which is semi-rural. Gloucestershire semi-rural, and there's only 9 railway stations in Gloucestershire, and some of those rural spaces are really quite hard to get to, and the integration is limiting, let's say. So in terms of the local challenges, that was done mainly, as I showed in the past slide, in how we sort of worked with communities through our other programmes of work, and what people wanted to sort of be able to access better. And it was clear that this limited integration from stations to nature sites was a major issue. And one of our programmes called Getaway is all about supporting young people from Gloucester to access the Cotswolds and the Forest of Dean. And many of those sites, that integration piece is really complicated. It's the most complicated piece of sort of supporting those young people to get to those places. If the actual countryside and the experience is wonderful, the rail experience is usually really positive, but actually that piece in the middle has always been a challenge. So we were really keen to dig into that further. So we've been looking at that in preparation for this feasibility that was commissioned, and also looked very carefully at what were the sort of barriers that were preventing people to access the countryside, be that a sense of safety, be that a sense of travel confidence, and then sort of clearly those missed opportunities for rail to integrate with bus or community transport or demand responsive transport, whatever it might be, that ends up integrating rail to those spaces. So we were extremely fortunate, and I didn't want to not include this in my presentation, that some of the partners we've been working with, it was when we first started, I have to say it was quite challenging to engage them on the relevance of transport in sort of equitable access to natural spaces, because some of those partners were very focused on, yes, my place is very accessible, it's got this, that and the other, we've created walkways that can fit trampers, we've created signage, but we spent about 3 years talking with those partners saying it's not just about that when you get there, it's getting there that's key. And it was quite a sort of upward struggle in a way to get that heard. And I think we're very, very lucky that one of our local partners funded a programme around accessing natural spaces, and we were invited to participate. So we had a real opportunity to have a voice at a table with partners like the National Trust, key destination sites, who then, after a year of working with us and other partners, came up with this infographic, which was just basically about the whole year of the programme. And as you can see, we were so excited to see that sort of bus kind of, and our work was featured quite heavily on there, and there was a real sort of strong recognition of the role that transport played. So I think we were, in terms of timing, it was like influencing and then someone really going with that and realizing, okay, if people are really going to access nature in an equitable fashion, people need to understand that better, and they ran this program, which was wonderful. So as you can see on the left, it references a Slimbridge shuttle bus, which was a piece of work that we did to pilot a connection from Cam and Dursley station to Slimbridge, which is a wetland trust site with over 550,000 visitors per year. It's a key site, but it has, real issues in terms of accessing it, and we piloted a link through this shuttle service, which then piqued people's interests. But yeah, it was a really serendipitous moment when this programme was taking place and gave us the opportunity to get really heard in terms of what transport meant in those contexts. So at that point, we were ready to activate the feasibility study around accessing nature, and thank you for the Community Rail Network's funding on that. We worked with several of those partners who were in the room, including the Slimbridge Wetlands Trust, Western Burt Arboretum, Cotswold National Landscape, and the National Trust. And we identified that with the funding and some match funding from the partners, we could cluster 6 key sites and commission a feasibility study to look at those and how they could be best integrated. And very, very important to all of those people, and probably partly influenced by those workshops that had taken place in the county, was understanding that if this is going to be an equitable access to the countryside, it needs to include really good integration and really good sort of travel confidence programs surrounding it. So I think everyone in this room and watching probably understands that whole piece around collaboration, but I couldn't leave it from this presentation, because without that collaboration and that alignment between partnerships, we couldn't have got this done. And obviously that includes the work all of the community rail partnerships are doing in Community Rail Network, and influencing the understanding and the importance of some significance of transport, travel and integration for communities. And that does involve quite a lot of work. And I think we mustn't underestimate the work that we do, because that is hard. You have to work with your partners, you have to work with your county councils, the operators, and try and find an aligned agenda to make sure that we're all working in the same direction and not in silo, and that we can bring it together and have more impact. So yeah, getting that sort of collective vision around the table was critical to making this and the outcome of this commission successful. So in terms of those sort of agendas being aligned, we were all aligned on equitable access. We all understood the significant role of transport in making it more accessible. We made some formal commitments. We signed some partnership agreements and MOUs, not specifically around this feasibility study, but other work that's surrounding this. And we planned for what we were going to do in the future, depending on the outcomes of the feasibility study. And we actually looked at what programs we'd like to do together and what worked going forward. So in terms of the actual feasibility itself, as I say, we had our 5 partners around the table with match funding and commitments from all of them and CRN, and the feasibility study was commissioned, and they looked very carefully at the demand, what demand exists, and the routes that would be useful for this connection to these 6 sites that were kind of linked to 3 railway stations. They identified some infrastructure improvements, some simple things that could be done that had been forgotten, and that the bus operators and the county council could make quite easily without much investment. What was really key in this, and the successful piece of this, was this opportunity to expand the council's demand responsive transport service called the Robin, which, again, fortuitously, they were actually thinking about at the time of this feasibility, and it actually stimulated them to think more closely at what that means in an equitable context and what it means for local communities, and how they could expand that demand responsive transport option to really mean something to local communities. We looked at the potential for discounted fares, joint promotion across the partners, because obviously if you're working with big sites like Slimbridge or Western Burt or the Cotswold National Landscape, they've got a lot of power and impetus in terms of marketing. And we were all committed to responding to those indices of deprivation and transport poverty, and how we're going to fundraise to make that really meaningful through providing programmes of support and travel confidence. So in terms of the lessons learnt, the importance of partnerships and stakeholder engagement and the time that takes, I think don't underestimate it. Although we did have so much funding, it took a lot more time than I ever imagined, and really getting people around the table and bringing them along the journey with you is critical. Otherwise you're not going to be successful. The value of pilots that demonstrate the concept. So we had already piloted a shuttle service from Dursley Station to Slimbridge that already had piqued some interest, and there was quite a lot of disappointment when that pilot ended. So it almost kind of encouraged people to think a little bit closer around, okay, how can we make this more meaningful? We building that business case. So the whole piece was around building a feasibility and a business case. And that was really powerful. And as I mentioned on the previous slide, that actually influenced our local council to look more closely at accessing nature sites. And they have since then committed to their demand responses service to actually focus on supporting those 6 sites along with other places, but they're going to have now 5 different Robin services that will be very much considering those nature sites that we looked at in the feasibility study. So that business case was really powerful and really influenced quite considerably in terms of what the outcomes of the project were. So the combining access initiatives with travel training and confidence building programs is, you know, something a bit of a bugbear for me. I feel like that's the bit that people often don't really get. They often think, okay, well, we've done all this work and we've got the integration, but actually to use it, especially a demand responsive service that lots of people don't understand, is massive, you know, and we need to build some programs around that, and that requires funding. We haven't achieved that yet, but we are having meetings now around how we can put a partnership bid in to make that possible for us to deliver some travel confidence programs to work with these partners and these sites. Yeah, so in terms of sort of where we're going next, our next meetings are going to be about marketing, because there are a lot of sort of murmurs coming from the community that the demand responses service doesn't work for them. They don't know how to operate it. So the county council have said, well, let's work together with all the partners to make that clearer message around how it works. And so to ensure that we get a really good uptake, we're going to be looking at partnership funding, specifically at the travel confidence aspect of this work, which is exciting to me and us as a team. We've achieved funding for an outdoor learning officer in partnership with Cotswold National Landscape and a youth organisation called World Jungle, which means that it won't be housed by us, it'll be housed by the Cotswold National Landscape. But we have been commissioned by them to run a travel confidence programme, which we are just about to sort of work on the match funding for. So there will be someone supporting this, and we'll be using this demand responsive service as a sort of place to support young people to access the countryside with us providing that travel confidence. And obviously that county level investment is key, and it seems that they're listening now. So we're going to be keeping to bang that drum around access to nature and the health and wellbeing outcomes that delivers to our communities. I think that's it really. If anyone wants to sort of ask any questions, I'm open to the questions. Also, if you just want to get in touch, please do. I can share a copy of the feasibility study, and if anyone's interested in that whole piece around accessing nature, that's sort of a key focus for us as an organisation. So really happy to share any insights and learn from you guys as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Hannah. We'll take questions at the end if that's okay. I'm sure there will be some, but thank you for your presentation. Very enlightening and a great project, and hopefully it will lead on to greater things as well. So thank you very much indeed. I'll pass over to Derek Bodey from Friends of Buxton Station now.
I'll try and share now. I don't know if you can see that.
Can't see at the moment, Derek. Just coming up now, I think, perhaps. Yep, if you can get that into full screen mode, if that's possible, yep. But we can see it otherwise.
Okay, this is a bit different to the other two. It's very much a work in progress. Friends of Buxton Station have been working with the Buxton Town team on producing a sustainable travel plan for the town. One of the key things that emerged was we've got the Monsal Trail, which is nationally known and attracts a lot of visitors, and you cannot get to it by bus or by rail, and everybody drives. And the Peak District, of course, has a problem with people driving. It's something like 13 million visitor car movements per year. And we came across Revolution. Revolution is the result of a Department for Transport competition that began in 2016 to design a very light railway vehicle that would reduce the cost of operating branch lines, was easy to maintain. This version here is the prototype down at Ironbridge, and it's diesel electric, but the ones that are going into production are wholly electric. It seats about 70 people. It's all modular. Everything can be done at the line side. You don't need pits to maintain it, and it's I don't know, something like 40% cheaper than a diesel multiple unit. We went to see it and we said, oh, how about bringing it to Buxton? And on the back of that, we were very grateful to receive a sorry, let me deal with this one first before we go on to that. This isn't a very clear map, but it's an attempt to show you that Buxton has a sort of legacy remaining of lines, because there used to be a line down to Ashbourne, which is the one that red, going down to Dowlow, which is a quarry. And we've been left with freight lines, which don't really integrate with anything. There's a lot of shunting outside my house, where the quarry freight trains have to reverse. They can't really go out on the passenger line because it's a very steep line. So they actually go down to Blackwell Mill and through a big tunnel to get to the Hope Valley line to then go south. The Monsal Trail starts at Blackwell. So the proposal was initially to have this Revolution running between Buxton and Blackwell Mill. As a second phase, to run it down to Dowlow, where it can link with the High Peak Trail, would provide a flat, a family-friendly route to connect the two trails together. There is no other flat route available. So we were able to get some funds from the Community Rail Network, for which we're very grateful. A learning lesson for us was we forgot VAT, which was a bit expensive. But it gave us the money to employ ACOM to say, what are the problems? And the ACOM report highlighted issues that needed to be overcome. The most important one of those was that it's not been designed to be compatible with the signalling system on the UK network as it stands. A lot of the market seen by the companies is abroad, where they use phone location technology to know where trains are, unlike our current line, which means it currently cannot use Buxton Station. It can't pass a signal. Stabling and refueling remain to be solved, which is complicated because it can't go into a station, and a method of recovery to deal with any equipment failures, because it's clearly its connections are not compatible with anything else on the network. We thought that would probably be the end of it, really, but behind the scenes, clearly somebody's interested in bringing Revolution to Buxton. At the moment, the company is building 3 of the electric versions, and they will be deployed next year, 2025. And they've identified lots of sites where it could happen. And to just give you a flavour, I mean, I suspect one of them may well end up at Oxenholme, running into Windermere, because it's a dedicated platform. It can go into that platform. It's not mixing with any other trains on the lines. And that's one of the big problems. But clearly somebody says, actually, Buxton's a bit of a challenge because it's got to mix with freight trains. And let's see if we can solve that one. Because the light rail section and Network Rail have done 2 significant pieces of work for us, pro bono, on the back of the study that came out. They've identified that a signalling solution is possible. The freight movements in the Buxton area are controlled by tokens rather than by signals. And this means they can design a token system that would allow Revolution, provided it could be hidden either end, and Peak Rail, which is a preserved steam railway, have a platform in Buxton. They don't have anything else, but they have a platform, and they have agreed, they're very happy for that to be used, and a new spur could be put in at Blackwell Mills. So with a bit of infrastructure at either end, there's a solution to the signalling issue. They've also done a timetable study to show that actually a service could be slotted around the freight movements. It would be lumpy during the week and much smoother and more regular during the weekends. But we're actually quite hopeful that the quarry companies will be prepared to amend their current movements. Ever since 1968, when the line down to Matlock from Buxton was closed, they've really had their own private railway network, and they tend to use it when and they wish to, rather than regarding any particular paths. We've also learned recently that TDI Eversholtz, the manufacturers, tell us that they're in discussion with the Office of Rail Regulation over a cheaper way of making Revolution visible to signallers, and they seem pretty confident this will be acceptable. If so, that's a real game changer for us, because that would allow it to be moved much more easily. So where are we now? We have proceeded to expressions of interest and selected a preferred supplier to do a strategic outline business case. And we're now trying to get the funding together to proceed with that. We are hopeful that we can get some matching funds from a local charity, and in principle, the Community Rail Network said they will produce some more funds for us. And if we've got that behind us, we hope we can encourage the local authority and our new mayor's office. She's expressed great interest in the scheme, to take up the rest and put together the funds that are available for the outline business case. If the signalling's changed and that solution's moved forward, then it's a real game changer, because it allows it to get into Buxton Station, it allows it to go down to Dowlow, and we can have a much more integrated system. So that's where we are. I think I finished.
Thank you, Derek. That's wonderful. A brilliant project. I should have said at the beginning that this was an ISTF project in the year 22-23. And as Derek alluded to, I think at the time, the feeling was that maybe it'd been a great study, but the conclusion had been that it might not be something that could progress. But actually, things have changed in the background, Derek, haven't they? And I think there's a great deal of optimism here about what might come from it.
Yeah, I think there's certainly some national interest, which is, you know, we feel as if other people wish this to happen, that's a nice place to be in some ways, but it's actually an uncomfortable place to be as well, because nobody's actually prepared to put any money in to actually take it to the next stage, really. And that's always the big problem with these things, isn't it? So we're left trying to get the money together, I think.
Yeah, well, we obviously wish you well with it, Derek, and we look forward to hearing how things progress over the coming months and years. So thank you very much for your presentation. So we've got a little bit of time. Nobody's placed any questions in the chat bar, but did anyone want to raise their hand, either using the raise hand icon or just put your hand up on the screen, and we'll take those in turn. Steve, I see you're first.
Yeah, I just exposed myself. My question, well, I've got several questions really, is to Steph, because I really think it's really good what she's been doing. And obviously it's the continuity of the several years that she's been running that bus link. And I just wanted to ask just a few questions around that. You started, I mean, Rivington's a really popular area, and there's a lot of sort of big urban areas around there, like Bolton, Chorley, and obviously Manchester itself and various other places, which is great because you've got the station at Chorley as well. And I think there's a station at Horwich. Would I be correct in thinking that, Steph?
Yep, that's right. That's where the bus actually starts.
So you've got the link, the train bus link, which is really good. But why did you actually drop Bolton? Because that's a big area, populated area. A lot of people would go to Rivington from Bolton, I would have thought.
Mainly that was an issue from the operator. So the initial service that ran from Bolton was an extension of an existing service, And in practice, it just presented more problems for the operator in terms of the timetabling of that route.
Yeah.
So for us, it made more sense to run from Horwich Parkway, simply because the train link is there between Bolton and Horwich, and then the bus can run more smoothly from there and do a loop within a shorter time period. So that allowed us to have an hourly service, which was a bit more reliable for people getting in and out of the area. And then the rest of the connectivity comes from the railway that side then.
So yes, I totally get that. So what about the Chorley link then? Is it a continuous link from Horwich to Rivington and then on to Chorley from there?
Yeah. So it kind of does a bit of a loop. So it's from Horwich Parkway round the country park up to Chorley, and then when it comes back, it kind of does a reverse loop. So the route actually around Rivington Country Park, because of the limitations with the traffic flow and the parking, it was safer for them to do like the same loop in both directions, if you will. So it kind of does a slightly different route on the way back from Chorley to Horwich, but it still includes that same loop of the actual Rivington area. But it seems to be working well so far, touch wood.
Is it a sort of minibus, Steph? Because you've got some really windy roads on that Rivington to Chorley route.
It's just a single decker. It's been that all the way throughout the services, and it seems to work okay so far. Again, thankfully, we've not had many problems in terms of, I think because the route is a circular route and not anywhere where the bus needs to turn. That's meant that it's been suitable to have a single decker so far. So yeah.
The other two questions really is you've obviously got local authority funding for this, which is really good. It's not easy to get that because we've got a similar service going in Dorset from Wareham to RSB on, and the local authority just given us we haven't got any money, and we've had to look at other partners to help fund it. And we know that it takes time to establish a route, as you've alluded to, and to get it out there and get awareness going so it's popular and you can get people to use it. But it's difficult. I don't know how you did that engagement, how you got all those people on board to help fund the project in the previous ones you've done.
Basically, the initial funding that we've had for the first 3 years, the third year we actually self-funded, because it was going to be the same. So the second year was a slight amendment from the first. The third year was the exact same service running again, and we really just wanted to keep it going, to keep that continuity. And then once we'd changed operators to Stagecoach for year 3, Stagecoach were really proactive then in not just pushing the service publicly, but also linking up. They're the ones that started the conversation with Lancashire County Council. And that's where the idea came that LCC basically said, well, we'd like the bus to go to Chorley, to which us and Stagecoach replied, well, you'll have to pay for that then. So it took a while, and it was a kind of extended process of negotiation between ourselves, Stagecoach, the operator, and the council. But we've got there in the end. We've got over the line, and the service is up and running now. Because that was one of the things that we encountered. Like every time we've run the service, we've had people saying, "Oh, why can't it go here? Why can't it go to Blackrod? Why can't it?" But the problem is purely the money. The route is doable. The timetable is malleable in terms of the operator, but it's basically just the cost of the service. So we have really tried to link up and get some different match funding each time, get a different operator, get them to start conversations. And that's what we'll be relying on going forward, is having more conversations with this now body of evidence that says, here's the passenger numbers, here's the need for the service. Please will somebody else keep it running now that we've kind of done the legwork for the first 4 years. So yeah, it'll be an ongoing conversation, I think, to the end of this year.
And presumably they help with the marketing, because that's a key factor as well, isn't it, to get the message out there, because you've only got this 2 days or Sunday and bank holidays at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. So we do a little bit ourselves. Obviously, we use our own social media, and we do a little bit of physical legwork in terms of dropping leaflets off at local businesses around the Rivington area. But Stagecoach are really good in terms of the Twitter feed and stuff like that, promoting the service and just trying to get it out there, and leafleting as well. So yeah, it's a team effort.
And finally, how much resource have you put in yourself? Because it sounds like you put a lot of work into this.
So it again, team effort. So myself and our chair, Julie. Julie's worked really, really hard to when we lost Diamond as an operator in 2023 at the beginning of that year, Julie really went out, and it wasn't that we first spoke to Stagecoach and then our problem was solved. It was an extended process of approaching different operators and knocking on different doors. But we've both been quite like a dog with a bone. So because we've been running this now, we were determined to get year 4 in place, get the funding in place, and get it going really. So it's just perseverance, I think, on behalf of myself and Julie. And Paul Salverson also helps as well with kind of working out the timetabling and the rail connections and that sort of stuff. So again, yeah, we are a real team effort at CRP.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, for those questions. I'll pass over to my colleague, Jenny.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Jenny. I'm the new Dan, I have to introduce myself as, but I'm going to be Project Support Officer for South Midlands. Hi, and so my question, Hannah, I was for you, really interesting, the access to nature work you've been doing. And actually, I've probably got too many questions, but I was wondering if the organisations that you're working with, like Slimbridge and all the others, are they doing, obviously they just want, presumably they want more people to be visiting their sites, but are they doing anything to incentivise people to travel sustainably, travel by rail, instead of driving their cars? So whether that's parking or, I don't know, free coffees with a train ticket, anything like that. Is that something that they're doing, or are they just interested in getting more people rather than a kind of a mode shift? If you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely know what you mean. No, thank you. That's a good question. There are incentives, and so Western Burt, they offer a discount for people arriving by public transport, but it's a really difficult site to access by public transport. And I have been working with them for a while, and they have been expressing the fact there's not enough uptake on that discount, and that demonstrates how few people are accessing the site by public transport. So they offer a reduction on the price. And Slimbridge, the incentive, I have to double check what it is, but there is an incentive. I think it might be cafe related, and sort of, yeah, a free coffee or something like that. But I suppose in terms of that kind of, are they just in it for the numbers and bums on seats, so to speak? And there are paywalls at 2 of those sites. So obviously Cotswold National Landscape and National Trust sites have less of a paywall. The Cotswolds definitely don't have. National Trust, you can still enter the sites, the ones that we were talking about, you can enter the majority of the sites without money. So there's no paywall. But the people that we were liaising with, so this came out of another piece of work that was going on in the county around the sustainability champions. So we'd already engaged them through that programme, the sustainability champions programme. So we knew which teams to engage with. We weren't engaging with a commercially motivated team. So for example, at Slimbridge, it's the sustainability manager that we're working with, who apparently every 4 years they review the staff's priorities around sustainability internally. And 2 years ago, it was identified the staff want to reduce the amount of people coming by car, and that they wanted a commitment from the sort of internally to trying to mode switch in terms of how staff are arriving, and volunteers. They have a high level of volunteers. So I think it was more about who you're engaging. They weren't generally commercially motivated, although the feasibility does look at that commercial motivation as well.
Thanks. It's really, really interesting how you can, for me, how to incentivize people and what the motivations are behind all those things. Anyway, hopefully you're on my patch, so we'll be able to talk this through another time.
Yeah,
Thank
look
you.
forward. Great to meet you.
You too.
Thank you, Jenny. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to put your hand up. I've just got one for Derek whilst I have the floor. I was just going to say, Derek, without being a betting man, how many years until something's in place? Oh, you're on mute, Derek, at the moment.
I think ultimately we're going to be in the hands of Network Rail and their programs for putting in the spurs at either end. And you know, how long's a piece of string then, aren't you? Because somebody's got to find the money for that. And I don't think we'll have one of the first 3 Revolution vehicles. I mean, as a railway person, I'm really excited by Revolution. I think it's got a lot to offer. If they can solve the signalling issue, then it becomes much more useful and flexible. But you can imagine, you know, the Loo line from Liskeard, again, a dedicated platform. This would electrify it at no sort of cost, in a sense, no overhead lines or anything else. But B, it would actually reduce the costs of running that line significantly, and therefore make it much more viable going into the future. So I think people want to make Buxton work, perhaps more than we do. In a sense, we've got lots of other sustainability things in the plan for the town team, particularly cycling and walking. But I think nationally there is, behind the scenes, there's a lot of wish to take on a challenge for Revolution and see if they really can crack it, to see that it can mix with other things on the network.
Yeah.
It doesn't pass the crash safety regulations for mixing with other vehicles without protection. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, Derek. And I guess the other thing I was going to say, you mentioned that the vehicles themselves are modular. So bearing in mind that you're likely to get a high number of people wishing to take their bikes on that train, is that something that can easily be built into it?
Yeah. The internals can be completely flexible. I mean, our concern from the financial viability of it is that actually a single carriage, which has a capacity of 70, if you then take it out, put bikes in, you're reducing the passenger flow, and that severely affects the economics. I would be quite keen for it to run with the German solution to bikes, which is a flat truck upon which you put Sheffield hoops, and people just push their bike off the platform onto the truck, padlock it up, and get on the train. And rather than taking seats out of Revolution, I'd rather put a truck in front of it.
Yeah, sure. And then I guess you got the issue of people then wanting to travel into Buxton with their bikes to make the connection, and the infrastructure that would need to support that as well.
Yes. We pre-COVID, we had made pretty good progress with Northern when they were a franchisee about the concept of putting on a bike train to Buxton from Manchester, because the rolling stock is pretty dedicated to the Buxton line. It didn't affect anything else. They kept on saying to us, well, where's your evidence? And I kept on saying, well, you're only allowed 2 people to take a bike on a train. So if I'm a family, I immediately just discount it completely. So how am I going to produce the evidence, you know, other than asking people in the street, which we did do. And then they said, well, of course, that's not valid because they're not real rail travellers. Okay. But we got pretty close. But since COVID, of course, they're just providing a service at the diktat of the Department of Transport, and getting them to consider any changes, well, they just simply say, we've got to go back to the department. And the department's telling them to reduce costs and raise revenue. So we've just lost our car club. We had a car club operating from the station with Enterprise, but Enterprise just withdrawn it across the whole of the Northern network because the fees they were being charged by Northern to put the cars in the car parks were raised significantly, and they just said, well, it's not financially viable for us. Our car club was steadily increasing. It wasn't financially viable. They were still subsidizing it, but the membership was slowly growing. Usage, 80% of the usage actually came from train travellers coming to Buxton and completing their journey with a hire car. I mean, just talk about shooting yourself in the foot. But we've lost that, and you know, just the frustration of actually getting a sensible conversation about these things is very difficult because they're just delivering a service.
Sure. Okay, well, watch this space there. I wish you well, and as and when it does get launched, I hope to be one of the first customers to be able to use it. So book me a space if you could.
Okay.
Well, we're just coming up to time now, everybody. So I just wanted to first of all start by thanking Steph, Hannah and Derek for your input today. Very much valued, and to the audience for attending, and hopefully it was useful for you. There's a couple of things that have been put in the chat. Steph and Steve, I guess offline, if you want to get in touch, you can come through me. Steve would like to have a follow-up conversation with you at some point about your experiences with the bus. So that'd be great if that could happen. And Gary's posted a link there, which I assume will be a picture of the bike transportation in Germany, which I'm sure will be an inspiration and answer lots of questions for us and make us wonder why we can't do that over here. Who knows? Well, for now, thanks once again for your time, everyone. As a reminder, we have another and our final showcase webinars next Thursday, same time. If you haven't booked on, please do visit the CRM website and you'll find the Eventbrite link where you can reserve your space. And also, if you want to join our Integrated Sustainable Transport discussion group, do get in touch. And also remembering the local cycling walking infrastructure plan website webinar, that's going to be taking place in September. You can book that via the CRM website as well. So thanks once again, and look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.